Hello fellow Hunters of the Blue and welcome to my channel and welcome to part 2 of the Perfect Palette series. In this video I will show you what would be my ideal contrast or one coat paint set, as well as my ideal metallic paint set. In total 50 paints that will give you all the tools you will ever need to paint any models. If you remember my first video, this is the final paint selection. Well, not really. Let's talk about a couple of changes I made since then. So this is the first color palette, and I'm really happy with it, but there were two colors here, Sundry Dust and Bane-Bearded Brown, which I wasn't. So I substitute them with Yellow-Green from Vallejo Model Color and Dark Ultramarine from Scale 75 Artist. That way I have a brighter yellowy green, which I love, and a super dark saturated blue, which I'm missing. And with this, the palette is complete. And I know the order is not correct, okay? Please abstain from saying that. I know it. I will redo them with the same color tiles as the new palette, but for the time being, this is enough. With those changes in play, I'm extremely proud of the results here. This is without a doubt my personal favorite paint selection in regular acrylics. But of course a lot of tools are missing and I wanted to address those in this video. I decided to expand the list with another set of 50 paints because symmetry is pretty, and included the two other paints type I consider a must: contrast paints and metallics. Before we start, let me talk to you about today's video sponsor, World Anvil. World Anvil is an ultimate all-in-one software for tabletop gamers, fantasy novelists, and anyone who loves creative world building. World Anvil is not just one tool, it's 3 complete creative toolsets: a world building suite, a campaign manager, and a novel writing and publishing tool. If you like to write Warhammer-inspired fanfiction, World Anvil is a novel planner and world building app with features like family trees, mind mapping, and plot templates. Based on proven storytelling methods, you can finish that story, and with publishing, subscription, and monetization tools, you can build your fan base. See why 2 million game masters use World Anvil for their campaigns. Go to worldanvil.com now and use the code Juan to get an amazing 51% off of your yearly plans. Whether you are an RPG enthusiast or like to create narrative tabletop campaigns, check out worldanvil.com and don't forget to use the code Juan with your yearly plans. Thanks World Anvil for sponsoring this video, and now, let's get cracking. Before we move on, a couple of disclaimers. First, this is my personal preference, and on top of that, it's also conditioned by availability. Sadly, in terms of contrast type paints, I only own Citadel and Vallejo, so my selection is only going to come from those two brands. Don't worry, the metallics have quite more variety. Secondly, I was part of the team that worked with Vallejo to develop the Express range, so I'm obviously very biased here, as I designed them specifically to cater to me and my needs as a painter. So please have that in mind while watching the video. So first things first, instead of using paper as we did last time, because this time we are using contrast, I wanted to do something different. So I 3D designed and printed these little paint demonstrators. They are inspired by Stally, and he uses some tiles, so I wanted to do the same, and this tile pattern is based on my home city. So I'm really happy with how they look, and they fit in the same space as my paper swatches. Here you have the swatches and you can see that they are the same size. Let's now get on to the painting itself, starting with the contrast, and our first color is going to be Templar White from Express. You could 100% use Apothecary White, but I just think Templar White is an improved version of Apothecary White, just a better Apothecary White, but there's nothing wrong with using Apothecary White, obviously. Our next color is going to be a bone color, and for this I'm going to go with Bag of Bones from Express. This is again just a better version of a Skeleton Horde with, in my opinion, a more beautiful hue. Just has such a pleasant hue to it, and the final result is so appealing. Just gives so much contrast with a super nice tint. It's just beautiful. We now move into the realm of yellows, and with yellows there are good options in the express range, but I just feel contrast just edges a little bit over them. So for our first yellow, we're going to use Bad Moon Yellow, which is an extremely powerful and bright yellow. You could easily use this yellow just to base coat something yellow. And for my dark yellow, I'm going to go for a classic, Iyanden Yellow. If you just want to use Vallejo, you could use Dreadnought Yellow. It's very similar, but I just love Iyanden Yellow. It's such a nostalgic paint for me. It's one of my favorite contrast colors, and I just had to include it. Also because they dry satin, that means that vibrant colors will shine more, it will look more saturated. We're not going to move into the orange because there's only one, and I could only choose this one, Chameleon Orange. And for me there's only this option because I specifically designed this paint. It's one of the colors that I picked and designed for the express range to be my perfect orange one coat paint. So for me this solves all my needs for orange. This might not be the case for you, but sure it is for me. Now we get into the red territory, and for that, for me, there are only these two options: Blood Angels Red and Flesh Tears Red. A one-on-one mix of these two paints is my perfect red. And yes, Blood Angels Red on itself, it just lacks a little bit of contrast for me, ironically. And the hue is not my favorite, but with the correct undertone, as I showed you in my 0 scale red armor video, it just turns out amazingly beautiful. And of course, Flesh Tears Red. I love the versatility of this paint because yes, it works wonders as a one coat solution, but as a base coat over a dark grey, it just works amazing. It will leave you the most beautiful burgundy base coat you will ever see. I usually do it over mechanical standard grey, and the result is just a deep burgundy. Yes, it doesn't have any contrast effects per se, but it's just such a beautiful color. Now we move into the pinks, and my first color is going to be Fluid Pink from Express, because it's such a unique color. It just leaves a bubble gum, like kind of Barbie pink, that is absolutely magnificent. Honestly, this wasn't one of the colors that I designed. In fact, I really wasn't sure about this paint when it was suggested, but after testing it, oh my god, I just fell in love with this paint. My next pink is going to be a very desaturated and transparent pink. Twilight Rose from Express. You can use Maker's Purple instead. The colors are quite similar. I just think Twilight Rose just works so much better. I just love this super transparent one coat paints. The ones that are really transparent, just look like black in the bottle. Once you put them over, they feel like magic, and this is one of them. And for my darkest, most intense pink, I'm going to go with Sigvald Burgundy. Sigvald Burgundy is one of the cases like Flesh Tears Red that is just so dark that it not only works fantastically well as a contrast paint, but also as a base coat. I've used this over grey again to base coat and get a super rich pinkish burgundy color. Look at that undertone showing. It's absolutely stunning. After the pinks, we move into the violets and purples, and my first color is going to be Gloomy Violet. Luxion Purple is very similar. I just prefer Gloomy Violet, but if you can get Express or you just prefer Citadel, just go for Luxion Purple. It will fill the same role. Again, beautiful tone, and a magnificent super bright highlight. These things you can do with super transparent pigments. It's just stuff like this. Look at the amount of contrast this paint is leaving. It's absolutely stunning. And because I also want a super saturated dark purple, again I'm going to Citadel. It's what I was talking about. If you want extreme saturation and like punch in terms of color, Citadel is just the place to go, and especially for the super dark colors. Again, it just looks like black, but the undertone is incredible. For the blues, I honestly just don't really like Citadel blues, so all of my selection are going to be from the Express range. We're starting with a desaturated blue. This is Wagram blue, a light blue Mystic blue, and a dark blue Legacy blue. Let's start with Wagram blue, which is, as I said, a desaturated kind of Prussian blue color, and it's really nice. It's one of my favorite blues just because it just doesn't look like blue. And I know it's like a meme, but I just like more interesting hues of blue rather than just, you know, like the pure blue that we're going to use for the next two colors. A Mystic blue is just like a cyan kind of color, really intensely blue. It's comically blue, but it does work very well, and it tints the surfaces blue very efficiently with this super bright blue. If you prefer Citadel, I think Talazar blue is exactly the same color, so just use that. And finally, Legacy blue, which is just an ultramarine blue, really deep and rich in color. I don't think there is an equivalent in the Citadel range for this one. Probably if you want to look for it, I would look in the newer ones. Something like Asherman blue or Celestium blue would be close, I think, one of those two, I just can't remember. Now we move into the turquoises and slash teals, and I'm just going to go for the classic combo. I like these paints way too much to not include them. A Killing Green and Turtle Turquoise. Sometimes classics are classics for a reason. And you can see here a Killing Green. What a nice paint. The Express offerings are also really good. I just feel like these two paints just stand out. And the colors are just perfect. And Pterodon just has the perfect amount of green. They are, again, extremely well formulated, these two colors. It's just beautiful. And then you can find similar colors to this in the Express. I think they are Caribbean turquoise and snake green would be the two equivalents. But because they are a little bit less saturated in terms of pigment, I just feel they are a little bit less useful. We now move into the greens. We start with a striking scorpion green because you really need the super bright yellowy green. You can also use orc skin from Express, but I just like this one more. Orc green would be more aligned to Mantis Warriors green, which is also fantastic paint. But I want saturation and purity, and again, I really lean towards yellowy toned paints. Same for the orange. I chose a yellowy tinted orange. For our mid-tone green, I'm going to go with Warp Lightning. Again, it's just a beautiful tone. I think Citadel really did a fantastic job with the greens and teals, with the exception probably of Dark Angels green, which I really don't like. But Warp Lightning is just fantastic paint, and there isn't a real equivalent in the Express range. And for my dark green, I'm going to switch brands and go with Monastic green from Express. It was assigned to mimic the Dark Angels armor, hence the subtle name. It's one of the intense colors, same as Legacy blue, and it works fantastically well. It's so much better than Dark Angels green. If you just want to paint Dark Angels fast, this would be my suggestion, because this is Dark Angels in a bottle. It's such a cool color and really easy to use, and you get a fantastic Dark Angels armor effect. Now we leave the realm of intense colors behind, and we're going to move into the drabs, military colors, grays, browns, stuff like that. And we're going to start with the military kind of colors. And for this whole section, our main line is going to be Express, because we designed colors to be specifically used for military purposes, such as armor green, commando green, camouflage green, military yellow, battledress brown, etc, etc. It's just, you just can't compete. Here we have armor green. I chose this color specifically to try and mimic Cadian armor. I know it's not necessarily a real historical period green armor, but probably really close to some of the green used for Russian or Soviet armor in World War II. So you have a lot of options with this green. The next color is going to be Commando green. And yes, I know there are more exciting colors, but I think that having in your palette a majority of useful but boring colors, like these kind of drabby colors, just makes it more useful and more versatile overall, which is what we're going for. We really are leaning into getting the most useful and reduced palette possible. The next one is Camouflage green. Again, these colors all do more or less the same thing, but just very useful and different hues. If you paint different things than me or have different preferences, you will probably lean heavier onto one color or onto a more vivid color palette. That is acceptable, of course, but this is again, the idea for this video is to show you what's my selection, my perfect selection. We are leaving the military greens behind, and we start with the ochres and browns. This is military yellow, which is similar to Bag of Bones, but yellower and darker. So it makes for a really useful ochre, neutral ochre color. And also again, really useful to paint military units with this. Or Bretonnian peasants. Now I'm going to move into one of my favorite paints from the Express range, Battledress Brown. As the name suggests, this was based on the British uniforms of World War II. But it's such a useful color, amazing to shade almost any color, but especially golds for an MM can be amazing with this, or just TMM golds in general. Sadly, I think I fucked up a little bit and I went over my recording allowance. Most cameras are limited to just 30 minutes of recording at a time, and I just exceeded it, and 3 paints were not shown. All of the 3 skin tones. First one is Dwarf Skin, which is this neutral Caucasian light skin tone, just like a better version of Guilliman Flesh, but you can use Guilliman Flesh if you prefer that. Then we go darker with Tan skin tone from Express also, which is not only darker, but also has a hue shift, so it's different in color and in value. And finally, Mahogany, also from Express, one of my favorite Express paints, and this beautiful dark brown that can be not only used for the darkest skin tones, but also to shade gold or leather, stuff like that. It just works really, really well. I want to introduce 3 different dark browns, or 3 different browns, and I went for Gore-Grunta, Garaghak Sewer, and Willow Bark. Let's start with Gore-Grunta. It's just a classic. You know this color, it's the best orange-brown one-coat paint in the market for me. It does all you want it to do, and it does it magnificently. Copper Brown from Express does something similar, but if you ask me, it's just not as good. We're going to follow up with the next of the contrast range, and the last of the contrast range, we're going to feature Garaghak Sewer. Again, really intense, really dark, greenish brown. It's so useful to have such a dark intense brown in your palette. And to finish off the browns is Willow Bark, another of my favorite express paints. If you prefer to stay with the Citadel line, I would probably recommend something like Wildwood instead of this, but I really prefer the hue of Willow Bark. You can use this to shade almost anything, and it turns into an amazing wash. It's incredible to do pre-shadings with. If you've watched my how to paint Bretonnian infantry video, you will see an amazing use of this paint. There are just 4 more paints to finish, and they are all from Vallejo, starting with Starship Steel. If you prefer Citadel, the equivalent would be Grief Charger Grey. I specifically chose this color because Grief Charger Grey is one of my all-time favorite contrast paints, and this is just Grief Charger Grey, but it just behaves better. I love this paint, so obviously I had to include it in the list. Now I'm going to use Viking Grey, another of the intense colors, and another color designed specifically to mimic a Space Marine armor. In this case, Space Wolves, if it wasn't already very obvious. Again, this is essentially a Space Wolves Grey in a bottle. And for the last of the cold greys, this is Black Lotus, which is a really blue-leaning black that, once applied, just looks like a dark blue-grey, and is one of my favorite express paints. Again, it's very versatile and really beautiful color. And I'm running out, and the paint is getting a little bit thicker in the bottle because it's one of the paints I use the most and one of the oldest. To finish off the one-coat paints or contrast paints, we have Hospitalier Black from Express. This paint is just the nicest, richest black of the whole selection, and it's just black. And it's also neutral black, which means that you can thin it down to get a neutral grey, which, as you can see, I don't have. And the reason I don't have a neutral grey is because, well, you can just use this. Just thin it down with some Express Medium, and there you go. There is one more paint that is not in the metallic range, and that I'm not going to demonstrate because it just makes no sense. And it's medium for the one coat paints, whether it's contrast or express. And my favorite is express medium, especially if you dislike the shininess of contrast paints. This added to them will kill the shine and make them flat and nice. But if you prefer the shininess, just get contrast medium. But I prefer this one, it's my personal choice. Now we move into the metallic paints, and for this I'm going to do things differently because applying them with a brush can be a little bit of a pain in the ass and really slow, and I just want to do this as quickly as possible. I'm going to use my airbrush, but all of these paints have been selected so they are nice to apply with a brush as well. And I'm going to start with the silvers, and my silver quartet will be this selection: silver from Model Color, silver from Game Color, oily steel from Model Color, and the first appearance of Duncan Rhodes' two thin coats paints in the shape of Dwarven Iron. And my first color is Model Color Silver, and it's the brightest silver of the whole lot. I've said this before and I will say it again and again and again, but Game Color Silver is the best silver edge highlight color in the market. This is a paint absolutely everyone should have. This is a must-have paint. Oily steel is, to me, the most attractive mid-tone steel color. It's beautiful. It's just slightly warmer than usual, which is a must for me. I really prefer warmer tones. Dwarven Iron is a lovely, again, warm, dark silver paint. It's incredibly beautiful. and it goes through the airbrush really well if you thin it down about 2 parts paint, 1 part thinner. Now our next paint is going to be the universal highlight for all of the not white metallics, and this is White Gold from Acryl, which is also the first appearance of Acryl in this episode, but not the last. And the next paint is going to be the second appearance of 2 thin coats in this series, Top Brass. Very useful to highlight anything from a copper to warm gold to just bronze. Now we move on to another entry on the game color range, Bright Bronze. Probably one of the shiniest bronze paints I've ever seen. This thing is amazing. We are now going to move on to the second Acryl paint, Bronze. Such a lovely hue this paint has. And again, it's a fantastic paint. Also really surprised by how good the Acryl Metallics paints are. We are going to go into the really red coppers, and the first one has to be this. Look at that color. It's incredible. Model color copper. The new version, of course. For our next copper color, I'm going to go for a dark one, and that is the third and sadly last appearance of Duncan Rhodes paints, a Steampunk copper. This one is a dark, rich copper with a slightly purplish tone. Our next paint is going to be Teeny Tin from Game Color, one of my favorite dark metallic paints. This is the darkest of the colored metallics. Just look at that color. We are now going to go into the gold territory, and I have 3 gold paints. Not necessarily in terms of brighter and darker, but just 3 different hues. Rich gold from Acryl, brass from Model Color, and bronze from Model Color. All of these I would consider golds, and all of them are just slightly hue variations depending, so you have 3 different tools to use for 3 different colored golds. Let's start with Acryl Rich Gold. This is the classic orangey gold. You can use Retributor Armor. The reason why I didn't is because it goes awful through the airbrush, and as I said, I want these paints to be multifunctional. For the next gold is Model Color Brass, and this is another classic color, classic gold color, but where Acryl Rich Gold leans more towards orange, this is intensely yellow, and it's amazing. Also goes with the brush like a dream. And for our last paint, we're going to use Model Color Bronze, and this is a really nicely green leaning gold. It's beautiful to represent like old gold, corroded metal. It's fantastic. This is the whole of the metallic range, and I wanted to show it to you before the final shot to the camera because I am so proud of the design of this range. You have everything you need to paint any hue of realistic metal you can think of, and it's just 14 paints. I am really happy with the results. I cannot tell you how proud I am of this paint set. It has taken me so much time to come up with it, but it was so worth the effort. I'm especially proud of the metallics. I really think it's the absolute perfect metallic palette. This new palette, along with the one in the first video, makes for the absolute perfect paint set for me. 100 paints in total and a toolbox that could tackle anything you would throw at it. If you want to get the paint testers, I have them available in my Patreon along with a selection of useful STLs I've made for the hobby, like bust holders and parts trays. Thank you for watching this video, and don't forget that if you like my videos and want to help me make them, you can follow me on social media. You have the links to all my social media in the description below and the pinned comment of this video. Share and like this video, but most importantly, there is Patreon and channel members. Patreons and members allow me to do all the cool videos that I want to make, and most importantly, they allow me to release them all for free here on YouTube. Perks include access to an amazing Discord community full of lovely people, access to many more Patreon exclusive videos, and now also private one-on-one online tutorings. Help me and join the list of the coolest persons in the planet, including Lugubrious Cramhorn, Derek VW, Liram Shoham, Aredrus, John Michael Harkness, Soil Shiyafet, Lucky Beaver 90, Emilio Engix, 3Gs, Marco Paratzik, James Coplin, Rogelio Thomas, Geek Daddy, Jamie Decat, Steel Fane, Kitam Go, TTSS Productions, Jay Hoover, Minis by Ape, Will Harris, Benjamin, Emily Queen of Sloth, Nicholas Davis, Agon David, Pablo Cuesta, Benjamin Barbet, Pumpkin Hill, Chris Black, Mateus Babiuk, Andrei Michensko, Aaron Miller, Jake Staines, Stefan Zimmerman, Andrew Walden, Tom, Dr. Mike, Martin Reveroa, Shishwal, PJM, David Ridey, Matt Wallis, Robert McKillon, Mark Carter, Hendrik, Mansonian, Chester Rose, Matt Griffiths, Tyler Hughes, Chris Gilroy, Allman Gaming, Spacey Joe, Mark Watson, Hamish Donald, Matthew Lang, Iñigo García, Stavros Stavros, Shinji Wo, Maraguera, Romain, Ars Miniatura, Jars Rex, Joe Offut, Dr. Cathaber, Angelos Alexaus Des, Giuseppe, Nicola Ancona, Rainer Hochberg, Mark Vellenkup, Felix Franke, Aaron Bernstein, Daniel Ramin, Bowsy, Phil Wahlberg, Terry Denham, Plutch, Howard Hothville, Stephanie All, Michael Wakeman, Painting Peter, Stephen Rockford, Roger Nilsson, Oscar Jonathan Thomberg, Nin Nguyen, Dan Mako Cristalios, Bartos Badensky, Kevin Mian, Darcy Farrar, Natius Maximus, Arondel, Javi Mota, Eamon Patton, Adam Thaxton, Heather Ansted, Mark Arkinson, Mark Jarvis, Fergal, Josh Simpson, Kristen Warren, G-Force, Dr. V, Bartolo Mukahusa, Lena Lindemann, Kieran Multher, Andrew Dyer, and Kevin Sulers. And as for me, I will catch you in the next one. Bye!